Hello and welcome to the CX Nexus podcast. I'm Nicole Saunders here with my co-host.
Chris Detzel.
Good to see you, Chris. How are you doing today?
Pretty good, Nicole. How about you?
I'm doing well. It's finally getting to be summer. Pretty excited about that. I feel like I start every episode with the weather update. Very Midwestern of me.
No, we do that on the South too. How's the weather and all that kind of stuff.
True.
But it's getting hot here in Dallas. I think it was
I
90
bet.
degrees the other day, 95 actually. So yeah,
That's
getting hot.
peak summer for me.
Well, not for us, but
You're ready.
so I think we wanted to talk a little bit about event management and how to run an
Mhm.
event and all these kinds of things. What do you think?
Yeah, I think events are great for people in community. A lot of time this comes up with things like user groups or user conferences or community summits or something like that. Oftentimes, this is a big function of a field marketing team.
Yeah.
Sometimes at a bigger company, there's going to be a global events team and regional field marketing teams, things like that. Sometimes success teams and sales teams run events. And it's just something that chances are, if you work in a customer oriented job, you're going to end up hosting or helping out with an event at some point. And so I know that you've been doing some really interesting ones lately with Relative. You've always been doing events, but you were just telling me about
Yeah.
a great new one that you were doing. So yeah, let's dig into it. Let's talk about what does it take to be successful running an event? What do we need to do? What do you need to think about? It's fun, but it's a lot of different parts.
It's insanity, to be honest.
Don't
So
scare
it's
the people, Chris.
Yeah, like I believe that on every single thing that you do, and I think you'd agree, is there's got to be some business outcomes. And it's, you don't just run events to think, oh, let's get our customers together, connect. That is one of the goals is for peer-to-peer connection. We know as community leaders that that drives net new, cross-sell, upsell, all those things. And people
Right.
want to connect to others that are doing similar things. We know that's valuable. We know it's true, but at the end of the day, we have to still have goals and things like that, and they have to be high. And I think that's where you start is we want to do an event. And just recently, I've had the pleasure or opportunity to run an event that we started back in February to plan and do, and that we just executed yesterday. So, it was,
Congratulations. You must be
yeah.
breathing a sigh of relief today.
Oh, it is. It's a sigh of relief. There's nothing like the process, right? You have to go
Mhm.
through the process to really understand it. And look, I've been
You
doing
do.
some of these things indirectly or directly, not running the entire event myself, but back when Reltio, we did our data-driven event back in October of last year. We'll do it again. It's our big kind of event. And we thought, and I think I've mentioned this before, obviously, on some other podcasts, that I've taken on a role around expansion. And so thinking of upsell and cross sell. And we thought this is a great opportunity for us to get some of our customers in one location for a half day to learn from each other, to really get the word out about Reltio, our product roadmap around some of that, have a keynote speaker, which in this case was our CEO, and then some people that speak about how they're using the product, what they're doing, and those kinds of things. And so that's really the high level of why we were doing the event. And again, the main reason is thinking about expansion, right? How do you expand on some of these existing accounts?
And to think about what's at the core of that for an event. We know that if people show up, they're going to get answers to questions. So
Yeah.
you might remove some roadblocks. They might learn about how somebody else is using a tool that they didn't think of, like a new use case. They're like, oh, I never realized I could use the software for that. That's great. And that can lead to expansion. Maybe they're going to learn about an add-on or an app or something that you can cross-sell or upsell. And at the end of the day, really what it is the event is all about helping the people that are attending see the value of what you're offering and understand it better. And that is the key thing to retaining and expanding customers. They're seeing value and they want to keep spending money because they're getting something out of it, right?
Yeah. And I was having this conversation with the sales leader that was there, and he said, this is this event is like talking to 50 plus or having 50 plus Zoom calls all around our company instead of and them connecting and doing peer-to-peer networking with each other,
Right,
talking
because
about
they'll
our company.
accelerate the whole conversation talking to each other. And the funny thing about events is I don't know that they're less work, right? We're about to unpack all the things you got to do.
Yeah.
They're a lot of work up front,
Yeah.
but then you get the bang for your buck all at once. And then the key is that sort of acceleration and the energy that happens when you bring people together. And something that we've all been craving and missing, I think, for a lot of years. I've been seeing people just really excited to get together all of a sudden 4 years later. And so I think that's really key. Events are fun, right? There's also like things that you can draw out of them. You get artifacts, you take pictures, maybe you take some video, maybe you
Exactly.
record a couple of quick sound bites with people. You've got all this stuff that you can bring back to your marketing team. There's a lot of different things that can come out of it that you're not going to get out of sales reps being on Zoom calls all day.
Every look, we all crave it. We all want in-person stuff. Look, nobody really wants to be on a Zoom call all day, every day. It just doesn't. And do these virtual events overall, like a half day event, really work? You know what I mean? Maybe. I'm not saying they
They
don't
deliver a lot of
completely,
the
but
same message, but you miss that
yeah,
energy that is
yeah.
so
I mean,
critical to the success of it.
I'll give you an example and we dive in deep of what it takes to actually build an
Yeah.
event. And, but like we people come for breakfast and they just network a little bit. They're just getting to know each other. So they're not really comfortable yet, but then they start talking and then you go through the event, you have a break, and then all of a sudden, this happened yesterday, like they're talking and then trying to get them out of the break to quit talking, to get back into the room was difficult. It was cool to watch. And then we went through all the sessions and everything else. And then when it ended, then we had a lunch, but no one was leaving the area, like in the main area where we had the speakers and
They
everything.
just
They were
wanted to
just
talk. They
talking.
didn't even care about the
And I was
sandwiches.
like, ding, ding,
That's a good
ding.
sign.
There's food in this other area. So I'm sitting there telling everybody, and they stand in there for another 20 minutes without even
Oh
going to
my
lunch,
goodness.
talking and hanging out. And then almost all of them go to lunch and they're there for the next 2 hours, right? It was a 12 to 2 lunch. And I thought, man, most people are probably going to leave early. No, they didn't. And I was thinking, how awesome. They truly wanted to network and talk to each other. They had access to, our product manager. They had, or one of our product leaders. They had access to our CEO, and our sales guys loved it because they're trying to close deals or whatever.
Yeah.
It was so awesome to see that I had a big part in to doing that when that many people showed up, and there's a lot of value. So I'll say that. So at the end of the
Awesome.
day, all the things that I'm about to talk about, it's worth
It's
it.
worth it.
And as you go through it, it's very difficult. It's
Yeah.
just a lot of stuff that you have to do.
So we talked about you have to know the goal, why you're running the event. And of course, as we talked about so many times, it's always good to start with the why so that you know what you need to do to get there and what you need to measure to show that you got there.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about that. What were some of the measures that you were thinking about going into
Yeah.
this event
Yeah.
to determine if this was successful and to show the value of it?
Yeah. It's a good question. And I think that those are the first things that you look at. The positive is that we have a great person that run events. She didn't do this particular event. She did help me. So with that said, though, there's already a template for what we do on events. This one's slightly different because it was a Reltio run specific event. It wasn't necessarily a
Mm-hmm.
thought leadership. There's some thought leadership in there, but it was specifically on, you think of expansion. So existing customers with some potential customers. So one is, what's our goal? How many people do we want at this event? Two is there's a influence pipeline goals, a
Mm-hmm.
revenue goal, number of opportunities we want to create. While some of that stuff doesn't happen until later down the road, but we still want to put those kinds of things together. So for us to spend X number of dollars on this event, we have to get X. And a lot of times that's 10 to 20X of a return is really the goal at the end of the day. Think about it.
Yeah, that's great.
Um,
That's a big return.
Well, 10X is always the return, and sometimes you want to try to push for more. So if you
Yeah.
spend X number of dollars, you want 10X on that value. And so it's important because this is new to us. Events aren't new at all. Go to the Gartners, we have our own big event. We call it data driven. It's more of a thought leadership kind of thing and different speakers and things like that. But this was more specific to us as a company and within a specific industry. So that's another thing is it's our industry event specific to an industry. Like in this case, it was life sciences. So we knew that's part of the goal. So we didn't want to bring a B2C company in because they probably wouldn't get value out of the life sciences event. You know what I mean?
So you're thinking about that end goal. You're thinking
Yeah.
about how you're going to measure it. You're thinking about your audience. Who are you going to invite? You got to think about your content, what's going to be relevant to that audience that's going to steer them towards those desired outcomes. And then how the heck are you going to get them there?
Yeah. So I think one
Talk to me a little
is,
about those pieces. How did you think about the content and then the structure of the event? And then how did you think about promoting it?
I feel like you've done this before, Nicole. So
A few times. I may have done event marketing in a past life.
yeah, all the right questions to ask. Because those are the exact things that you have to think about. Is one is you got to think about before you invite people, you have to at least have a high level agenda. So what are the topics that you're going to talk about? What are you going to go into deep? You know what I mean? Because if you don't have a good agenda, then how do you know? And then at the same time, when you have this high level agenda, because we didn't have a lot of time to get it out. So we had to hurry and then let the agenda form as it went. And so that's how we did it was we had a high level piece to say, we want to talk about this from 9 to 10, 10 to 11, whatever. And so that's what we did. And then we created a page. So we'll get a little tactical because I think that is a lot of this
part
is
of it. You got to do events are about the
tactics.
details, right?
It is.
You have to have all the little pieces and the tactics in place to your point. And one thing I want to call out there, it is totally okay to get your page up and say, here's what the event is going to be about, more detail to come.
Yep.
The more information you have, the more registrations you're going to get right away. But you also want to give people enough notice and enough time. And so if you have to balance between having the details and getting the webpage out there, get the webpage out there and send more follow-up emails later. So that people
before
can
you do
register.
all that, you have to have a venue. Like, where's it going to be at?
We haven't even gotten into the actual logistics. So
yeah,
dig into that for us, Chris.
Logistics is key, and it's not my forte. Let's just be honest. Like, it's sometimes some of the things we're really good at, and so I learned a lot. I leaned heavily in on some of our people that already do this for a living, and trust me, like she did amazing. And so it's logistics, like what hotel you're going to have it at, what time it's going to be, the food. Do they offer food, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever you're doing, snacks, etc. How big is the room? What does the room look like? All these things, because if I'm going to have 70 or 80 people at an event, you got to make sure it's going to hold them and then that they can go somewhere for lunch and that there's hotel rooms available. You have to have a block of rooms and all of that at a certain price and things like that. Like this particular event was pretty much in the heart of the life sciences space in New Jersey. So the beauty about that is that a lot of people weren't traveling in. They just drove in an hour away.
That's nice. That makes it a lot easier when you don't have to deal with hotels or flights or even parking can be a trick sometimes. You got to make sure it's easy for people to get to. Events are a little bit like a web page, right? Everybody knows that. Maybe not everybody knows, but with a web page, you want to reduce the clicks to get something done because every click is a drop-off point for people. And with events, you can think of parking and registration and all of those elements clicks on the web page where somebody might be like, oh, I really want to go to that event, but parking there's terrible. Maybe I'll just catch the recording.
Yeah.
So you do want to think about those details to maximize your impact, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that you have to think about in the past, so when we did our data-driven event, which we're doing this year, that's where we're going to have 400 or 500 people. It's not extremely big, but it's bigger than what we've ever done. So there you have to think about, is it paid? Is it not paid? Is it free? Most of the time, if people pay for the event, even if it's $500-600, most people are going to come because you're not going to get your money back. You know what I mean? So if they pay for it, you have a higher chance of people coming. If they don't, like this particular event we're talking about, it was free. And so you just got to know if you have 80 or 90, 100 people that registered, you're probably going to have a drop off of 60 or 30 or 40%. You know what I mean? That's just what happens. And so you have to keep that in mind. And that's something we thought about, but we knew we were going to do this for free because we knew we'd have a pretty good, or we had a feeling that we'd have a pretty good crowd, but you never know until you get there. You're like, okay, who's going to show up? So.
Yeah, that's true. So coming back to like, how did you get the invites out?
Yeah.
How did you think about the words that went on the email? What did that look like? Because sending the invites to the party, I feel is one of the most critical pieces. Otherwise, you either spend a lot of effort on an event that's poorly attended, or you have a whole bunch of people who have expectations that are different than what you're trying to do.
I think one is all about the key message. What's the key message of your event? And then what is it look like at a high level from the agenda. And so that's right. And so I had to create an email template so that I could send out, that all of the AEs could send out, that whoever wanted to, that the CSMs could send out. And so trying to build this whole entire uh, ecosystem of who's sending out what. So we
Yeah.
probably should go backwards, because something I didn't mention that I think is very important is what I think of as work streams. So
Hmm.
you've got to try to figure out, all right, who's going to be on your team? Who's the core people that's going to be on your team? Maybe 5 to 7 people. And so I identified it was obviously me, because I'm trying to manage the event. But two is you have AEs that are specialized in life sciences. So you make sure those AEs are on. We have renewal reps that actually count, that do the expansion piece, that have
Hmm.
some skin in the game, that they'll want people to, and then some of the CSMs that have the relationships with. So having some of those right people on, and maybe somebody that can do some of the logistics that I invited to that. So a couple people there. So I had 5 to 7 people that were core to that group. And then you go execute, and then you put names on, hey, you're going to go do this, you're going to go do this, and you're going to go do this. I'm going to do this. And you just put it on a PowerPoint or whatever. And then,
Right. You're
you meet
racy, right? The roles and
Casey. Yeah, that's right.
responsibilities. And with an event, it is so important to have
Yeah.
those crisp roles because there are so many pieces. They're in constant motion. It's good with any project, but I think events in particular, you can get cross wires really easily.
Yeah, that's right. And then you got to meet we met weekly. And then the leader of, so there's also in your DAC, RACI, whatever you want to call it, but you have people that are over this, and then you have contributors and that kind of stuff. And so there's also a main person that's over it. In our case, it was our leader of sales. And I could go to him when I had issues and say, hey, dude, like this is going on. What do you think? So he was my kind of, if so and so didn't say it, you have to go ask that guy. You know what I mean? So I can deflect a little bit, you know? What happens on these kind of events is that once the word gets out, everybody in the organization wants to go, and so it's hard to say no, or you have
That's
partners
often
that
the
want to
problem. You
go.
end up with more employees that want to be there than
Yeah,
guests.
it is. And it's for good reason, right? It's not, oh my God,
Hmm.
there's good reason why maybe they should go, but you don't want it just to be filled up with just employees. And so that's always
Right.
a balance. You want them to go, and you're just trying to manage that. There's like partners, for example, that all want to go because they want to meet our customers and things like that. So you have to try to limit that. So bringing in our alliance team to help manage some of that is key, because you don't want it to be overran by partners, but you want to have our partners there because they're key to what we do and helping us to spread the message.
Yeah.
So I think that's core. So before I get into all the how do you reach out to all those people, so that's core to what you have to do is come up with that DAISY and then manage that DAISY and put responsibilities and roles and things like that. So we can go into
I was,
the good.
I was going to say, I love that you're engaging the sales and the success teams in this. That's a trick that I've always used. Oftentimes, when you're thinking about events, it's easy to just be like, I just need an email campaign, or I just need to put some stuff out on social media. But we all know you're much more likely to attend something if someone you trust says,
Yeah.
hey, I think that you'd be really good for this, or I think you really like this, or I'm going to be there. Do you want to come? And so leveraging your go-to-market teams, they're often looking for a reason to reach out for their customers and
Yeah.
offer them some value. So if you can provide them with that thing of, hey, go reach out to your customers this week, invite them to this cool thing, will help them understand value. It'll help your sales numbers. It's a win all the way around. The key is just to make sure that you've got those materials, you've got those resources, and you're making those direct contacts with those go-to-market teams that can really help you promote.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that as you get into that, like one of the things that you mentioned was, how did you start reaching out? You can use
Mhm.
that, but there's a lot of channels that you can go through. And so for us, and as you get into bigger organizations, it's even more important to say, okay, if I want to send an email out to our entire base, there's a process that we have to go through to make sure that
Right.
happens. If I want 3 emails sent out to our entire customer base and prospect base, I've got to write the email. I'm going to have the title. I'm going to do it 3 different times. It's okay. The first email is this, hey, we have this event. The second email, hey, just so you know, you didn't sign up yet. We have this event. Third email is last chance email kind of stuff. And so putting that together, send it to the process for the marketing team to do. But then also having the AEs and the CSMs and the RAs to start pushing the event and creating that template of emails saying, hey, this is the key message. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we're trying to do. When they start sending out emails and things like that. So it's just using the channels. AEs, they can send out personalized emails because they have true relationships with some of these customers and even
Yeah.
prospects. Two is RAEs because the same reason, and they might have maybe contacts as well, and they can work with their AE to do that. CSMs have really good relationships with our customers as well. So really trying to coordinate that and make it happen. So that's one. And then two is I have access to thousands of our customers because of the community and sorting out which spaces. So in this case, it was life sciences. I'm saying, okay, these are all our life sciences customers, some partners, and then creating that list and then sending out a personalized email from me because a lot of those people do engage with me specifically on our live shows and everything else. And so there's like multiple um, avenues to go to really to use, and that's what we did. So sure, there's other ways, but email's key. Phone calls, like when I did a live show, I would talk about it all the time, put the link in the chat, kind of stuff. We do a lot of those live shows.
So, see, we've talked about how you planned the event, how you thought about it, how you invited people there. Do you want to get into some of the logistics of finding and setting up the space? And did you have food and some of
Yeah.
those pieces? Because those are critical too, right? You don't want to invite people for a day-long thing and be like, all right, go find lunch by yourself. You,
Yeah.
you have to think about all of those pieces too.
So there's logistics and then there's content. So let's talk about logistics and then maybe content because I think,
All right.
you know, so logistics wise, you got to find the hotel, the venue. What is this? Can the hotel, I think we talked about this, can they hold that many people? What are you expecting? And all of that kind of stuff. And then we wanted to do a networking breakfast. We wanted to do a quick break, 15, 20 minutes, but there's still going to be coffee and food. And then you got to think about, then we had a lunch. And so a networking lunch for 2 hours, which went for the whole 2 hours. So you got to think about that. And there's a reason, hey, look, we're going to feed you. You're going to be comfortable. Just that's what people expect. If you're going to, it was a half day long event, basically from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So almost a whole day, but not quite. And 4 of those hours were content focused, but then really 3 of those hours were really focused in on, or maybe only 3 hours is content. And then the rest was focused on networking. And that's the beauty about these. You don't have to have topics to network. People just network. They just talk because you have that content, boom. And then now they're like interested to talk to your product leader, each other, or maybe our CEO. Everybody's just wanting to talk to him. But so that's what we did. Parking wasn't an issue. I mean, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And logistics is probably, I think it's the most underrated thing if you think about it. So think about this is when you get to the hotel, you got to think about swag, you got to think about name badges and all of this stuff that, and you got to ship the stuff over and make sure that's all there. And then I got there like at 6 a.m. when I was, and then did all the setup, put all the badges in alphabetical order. Look, this is just normal stuff, but we had an extra room that I can put my bags in and then other stuff just to, that I could just go pick up and push to the table. What kind of swag do you want to have that? We had gifts for the speakers
Oh, yeah.
and
Critical. You got to have a
yeah,
swag bag.
a swag bag and so there's just a lot to think about on even and that was a small event. That's a tiny, I think we had 59, 60 people there overall, but it's still extremely valuable. You can't just say, oh, let's just get together for some beers. You can do that on maybe these smaller kind of user group like things. And I think some of that is important, but it's a different kind of, but this is a little bit bigger event. And can you imagine doing that same event, but at a bigger, you have more swag? It's very similar though, of the whole process.
Yeah, it is. And that's the interesting thing is that it scales up or down, whether you're
Yeah,
doing
it
a
does.
fairly casual meetup or a 10,000 person conference. It's a lot of the same steps. It's just how involved they are and how big you make it. And
Yeah.
Chris, I love this. I think this is a really comprehensive overview and it gives people an idea too. How many times have you had somebody come to you and be like, hey, I want to do an event? And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about what that means and what is involved with that to be successful with it. Because the key
Yeah.
thing is it's better to not do an event than to have a bad one. And so you
Absolutely.
do have to have your ducks in a row. You do have to make sure you've thought through all of these elements and gotten it all coordinated and gotten it all planned and done it in a timely manner and do it within budget. It's a lot.
It's exhausting. But and before I give you the outcomes, because the outcomes were very
Best
positive and
part.
good, but
Yeah.
it's the content. And so what
Mhm.
I did, so you got to find speakers, you got to find who's going to be the main keynote, who's going to fit in the middle, and things like that. We knew that one is it's a relative event was for us, and we knew that, or I knew, I was like, hey, look, why don't I just get our CEO and let's send him a note and see if he'll do it. And he did instantly. Like he was like, yeah, let's go. And so he's got to, so then you got to think about his content. Here I am working with one of our guys that works with our CEO a lot on kind of high level stuff and messaging and all that kind of stuff. And so we worked with our CEO to come up with the presentation, and people are working on his deck and all this kind of stuff throughout and did a pretty amazing job. But then in the middle, we made this slightly easier for us so we wanted to have customer panels. And so for us, we didn't want them to present a lot of stuff because it's just another added thing. And it's
Mhm.
the other thing is these customers had to get approval before they could even present something. So it's a little less of a burden for them to have to go and just get all these approvals. And it's a little easier just to talk about it, right? It's not recorded or anything else. And so what we did is one of our AEs led a discussion as a moderator. He knows the space inside and out, and he's been working with these customers for years and had one of the sessions and three customers. And we just went to talk about business outcomes. Are you using it? What are you doing from an MDM standpoint? And then the other session was just a chat between our leader of sales and another customer, right? And just went deep into it's very similar to the one before, but it was just a one-on-one. And
Mhm.
then we had a product roadmap session specifically for this group from our product
Yeah.
team. And so all of that, when you think of producing it, getting it, you're trying to get people to say yes and all these things. You're trying to produce certain things. You got to get the key messages out and all of these things. And it's a lot because if you think about it, it's more than just a one person show, right? Somebody has to manage it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. You got Sky Kevin doing a bunch of things with our CEO. You've got the AEs doing stuff with their customers to get the questions ready and everything else. And I'm having to attend all the sessions and all that kind of stuff. And then product roadmap session. We got to make sure that the key messages are there. And so working with that guy. So you're working with every single person that is part of it. You're just trying to guide it, manage it as best you can. And nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not, but you just got to try, just get through some of that mistakes are going to happen. And so that's part of it. And then you get to the event, you got to make sure that from a logistics standpoint, that the presentation is sent like a day or two before to the team, the hotel team. So because they have these laptops, and this happens almost in every hotel. I've seen it. Is you email them the PowerPoint deck, and then they put it on a thumb drive and push it into these laptops. Sometimes in this case, it was two laptops because one did the monitor that the speaker reads, and then the other one was,
Mhm.
and so then but then people want to make changes day of. And I'm like, this is going to be difficult. Like I have to move this slide to this slide and then get an email. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that are
Right.
happening. Like you think just things that shouldn't, but they do. It's just life. Like one person wanted to move around their deck and everything else. And when they get up there, it didn't do exactly what they thought. So they had to improvise themselves. So there's a lot of opportunities to make mistakes. And so you got to really think about all of that stuff. But it turned out overall, the content was good and it was really great actually. And then, but there's just so many moving parts.
Yeah. There are a lot of moving parts, and that's the key. You have to make sure that as you're going through the whole piece, you've got your project management dialed in. Know where you're mapping this stuff out. Make sure you can check on progress because all of these things we talked about, you're going to be working on in parallel, right? It's some of them are dependencies where you work on them in a chain order, but a lot of these you're working on the content at the same time you're confirming the sandwich vendor at the same time you're coordinating your speakers. Inevitably, something will be settled and then will blow up, and you have to pivot and fix it. On that note, I have to give one shout out to the Zendesk Global Events team. 2 weeks before our user conference this year, they had to find a new venue because the venue we were
Wow,
going to use,
that's terrible.
a whole bunch of their staff went on strike and thousands of people flying across the country to attend this. And they did it seamlessly. The event was great. There were almost no hiccups with all of that. And so that's another thing. If you're going to plan an event, be ready to be like the Zendesk Global Event team and pivot if you have to, because something will always go wrong.
You have to pivot. Like speaker's gonna there's a speaker that might cancel at the last minute. You got to go find somebody else. You know what I mean?
Totally. You might
It's
find out
just
there's no power in the room that you were going to do this big presentation that required something, or something about the setup's going to be different, or you never know. It's good to have backup plans and good to go into these events knowing it's going to be a lot of pieces. I'm going to have a lot of information to keep track of. I'm probably going to run into some hiccups along the way, but it's all going to be worth it when you get those people in the room and they won't even go to lunch because they're so excited to talk to each other. And then you walk away with results like the ones that
that's
you've been
right.
seeing.
It was just
It's worth
yesterday,
it.
and the results I think are going to be really big, and I think we'll hit all of our goals. And even if we don't, like, it was really good to get everyone together and connecting, and we knew we had the right people in the room, and it went extremely well from my point of view, and I think some others as well. You're always gonna. Sometimes you just got to prepare that you might not know what's going to happen. You might not be able to have a backup plan, but
Yeah.
you'll think on your feet. You'll figure it out. One guy and we can stop, but he's Chris, you're pacing around. What's going on? I was like, I'm just thinking, like, I'm thinking, okay, how do I make this better? Or how do I make it not like it just, so I was pacing through the event and going to people saying, hey, we got to do this. And it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. But so I thought this was a great topic. So thanks for indulging me a
Same.
little bit to talk more about it.
Absolutely. If anyone ever wants to pick our brains on events, Chris and I have probably decades at this point of combined experience doing this
Yeah.
kind of thing. We're always happy to share our ideas. We appreciate you listening. Please share. Please give us a 5-star review. That's the thing that makes the biggest difference in showing up in search results. And until next time, I'm Nicole Saunders, and
I'm Chris Detzel.
all right, have a good one.
Take care.